Hello, everybody. We are calling in from the road. No, I am not driving, I am riding. We are on our way to Atlanta because we cannot fly out of Orlando. So you can see out the window, the weather is clear, it's good, the roads are clear. So we're doing all right, but our hearts are breaking for the Bahamas, and we are thinking about them right now. It's just rough. All right, I'm going to bring my dad on. Hello, Dad. We have some feedback again. Is that you or me?
Oh no.
Yeah, because I had this last time with just you.
Is that any better?
That's better. Yeah, it's
Okay.
still low level sound problem there. You want to try and plug back
Can.
in?
I'm
Yeah,
I'm
let's.
sounding fine on my end. So
Yeah, pull it out for a minute. Unplug for a minute.
unplug. That any better?
Yeah, that's a lot better.
Yeah, it's a lot better.
Oh
Okay.
no,
Oh
it's.
no, it's.
Are you there
How about
now?
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it still has a buzz. It's something on your end. It's your headphones or something. I don't know.
Well, I can't change it. Not at this
No,
point.
not now. Just investigate. How's the weather down there?
Where we're at, it's great. We're not having any
Okay,
problems.
good.
Supposedly, we should get a couple of small, storms, but that's just normal Florida, for us. So we're okay. Where are you at?
So we are about an hour and a half north of Orlando on our way to Atlanta. The Orlando airport is already closed. It closed at 2 a.m. this morning. So we
Right.
made a great decision a couple of days ago to be able to preserve our ability to come to Orlando, but still be able to get out. We are driving to Atlanta to get out from there.
Okay.
From there, we'll be going straight to Michigan a day early to make sure that we could make it to our town hall. We didn't want to miss that experience, obviously, but it meant a lot of maneuvering, to be honest.
Good.
But we're excited. We were able to meet with a number of folks in town, even with a couple hours' notice. It was good just to catch up with people. So definitely worth the trip, and certainly nice to get home and see the family and friends that
I
we've
guess.
missed. Yeah,
And I'm
even
sorry I
just
didn't
one day
make
to
it.
take off. I know. Well, I'm glad to hear you're feeling better. You sound better.
Yeah, overnight it cleared up some. I'm still
Good.
really, my head is still pounding a little bit, but that's all right, Maybe it's maybe it's not due to a cold. Maybe it's just my normal health.
Well, yeah. Well, the pressure outside probably isn't helping as well. So the
Something.
even if you're not getting hit by the rain, um, so my dad's in Bradenton, which is on the west coast of Florida, which oftentimes does get hit, but will be probably spared this time. And as I said in the beginning, we need to give a little shout out to the Bahamas. I know they're not going to receive
Oh,
it right now, um, but for people who are watching and don't know what that entails, when a hurricane sits still or essentially still for a long time, the impact is substantially more devastating than what happens when it passes through, regardless of winds. The winds just add to it. They are going to be in a world of hurt, and anything anybody can do to be helpful is going to be needed without a doubt. This is bad. This is very, very bad for that island.
to
Um,
have that sit there that long,
yeah,
I have no idea how there's anything standing because
I
they're experiencing basically tornado winds at a Cat
yes,
5
yes.
for 12 or 24 hours. I mean, that's just unheard of. I mean, there shouldn't be a building or a tree or any infrastructure left. I mean, it's just it's quite impossible. And I don't think anybody will really understand the
No, unless you've
devastation
lived
until
through it.
later. Yeah.
So to put it in perspective, we had a tropical storm Faye, which never actually reached hurricane strength at any point, and it sat over top of our house for 3 days. We had $70,000 in damage. We had to gut our downstairs,
Right.
and we were out of our house for about 6 months straight. So yeah, as Meredith is putting up there, these are tornado level winds,
Right.
sustained winds, and I'll add to it that so you have that water. I mean, the hurricane has been over them almost 3 days, and then the
It's
storm
crazy.
surge on top of it. Um, you're at 2 stories of continuous water. It's going to take people out without a doubt. So
Yeah, the worst.
this is bad.
Yeah, the worst conditions I ever saw were Andrew when I was in Miami, and
Yeah,
they were they're unimaginable unless you've really actually seen it. You can see some of the pictures on the
yeah,
TV and different things, but until you actually experience the devastation in person, when there is nothing left. I mean, they literally anything above 15 feet is now gone. I mean,
yeah.
it doesn't matter what it is. It didn't matter. Every power pole, every tree, everything is gone, and that went through relatively quickly. I can't even imagine what they experienced over there. So
Nope.
anyhow,
It's
yes,
going to be bad. So, yeah,
I
I just
hope
want to give a shout
everybody.
out to them.
I'm glad we're a little better prepared. I mean, in
Yeah,
the
we are
states we're
much better
prepared.
prepared. Yeah,
Islands are
not.
difficult to support because of the
Yep.
obvious thing. They're an island. They're hard to see get there, get things to them. It's Puerto Rico is a perfect example. You can you
Yep.
know what happens when it lands, and you don't just drive an electrical truck over across the you know stage them you know 100 miles away and then drive them in when everything is cleared up. So
No.
it's a unique way of having to experience that, and I really um, I hope those people are able to survive the the future, because it literally is going to change their future. There is no doubt
Yeah, it
about
is.
that.
This is going to be far worse than Puerto Rico, without a doubt. Without a
Yeah.
doubt. All right, so changing course. It doesn't. The reality is, doesn't stop what's happening in the country. Obviously, our hearts also go out to Odessa. They have
Yeah.
a lot to digest and understand in that shooting. Was just reading up on that and trying to get in the head of the shooter. The reason I bring this up is because the topic for today, as we are switching into our month focused on education, and what a strange and horrible overlap of education and military as we switch from one and go to the other. And yet here we have these shooters that are on a rampage. This guy was just on a shooting spree, literally just spraying bullets outside his car. It reminds me tremendously of what happened in DC many years ago, which then I'll tie to the Juba sniper, who is somebody that was studied heavily in military overseas and led to an enormous amount of research looking at how to better educate, how to develop, how to identify skills in individuals that could avoid these snipers. I can't even believe this is something that we're talking about as far as education goes, but it
Right.
is something that crosses over. How do we make sure that all our people are educated? And sadly so, how do we look to the military to share with us some of the information that they have? Um, Topic today really is, what is the number one thing facing teachers that they're concerned about? And I think without a doubt, I call it readiness to teach, meaning, do we have the money? Do we have the resources? And are we set up for success? And the answer to every one of these questions is no. uh, they're not getting paid in all the states. Some states are being paid well, but not all states are being paid well. Um, Yes, Meredith's pointing out that we're not teaching the resilience and coping mechanisms. So that, yes, that's my third point. Exactly, I agree. So you've got teacher pay, which is an issue in many states, not all, but many states, and severely so in those states where it is. Then you've got resource access. Teachers routinely are buying things for their classrooms, and we can all agree that's problematic and need to be doing a better job to help them. And then there's the last piece, which is making sure that teachers are, I hesitate to use this word, but armed with the knowledge that they need to have to be able to help students in things that have nothing to do with what they're actually teaching cognitively. And do they have the support from their educational communities, meaning the administrators, to have the freedom to teach the students the way they need to be. You basically, I mean, in some cases, you literally could have a robot do it, and that's not teaching. That is way
No.
over regulation.
I think,
And yeah, go ahead, Dad.
well, I was just, what I was going to comment on and going a little further was the fact is that, and just talking with Lindsay about different things, but the fact is that each school system has been driven to having to abide by so many different outside forces to actually educate students.
Yes.
And when those outside forces continue to put pressure on different specialties or whatever, it really causes teachers to sit back and have struggles through the education process, let alone societal problems and all the things that involve in their classrooms. And
Yep.
it wasn't part of a life that I knew, but then I think after living life and being around the world a little bit, I was kind of hidden in a little corner called Minnesota that wasn't exactly, mainstream America, I guess, if you're going to call it that. I mean, we were, different things were looked at. Classroom was a special place. It wasn't treated as the situation it is today, where I think everything is taken for granted in some fashion or form. And so, unfortunately, the poor teachers are really having to deal with a lot of problems that I don't think they're even. I think now they're starting to prepare them coming out of college for the environment they are. Maybe they're not, and that's really unfortunate because they're going to be forced into a situation where they're not prepared at all, and really, and they get forced into curriculums that they're not even familiar with or even have been instructed on how to instruct them. And
Right.
I don't know if that can come from a national level. And this was one of the things is how can the, a federal government control a locally driven program? We can put certain things in force and then just provide funds, I guess, for the operation of that. But are you driving over a railroad track? Anyhow, so I guess those are all factors that I observe from the outside looking in, certainly from not having to be, uh, educate anyone anymore. I mean, you obviously succeeded, and so did Lindsay. But the parents of today also are driven to have problems within their own world, and so that it's leaking over into the school. I'll just say one last thing and let you talk. I think still the greatest thing that happened in America was public education. I think it was the first thing and the one thing that actually separated us and provided us with the conduit to go, farther, faster, and into the future than any other country in the world. And I think if we can't, I hope we can recapture that whole essence where education is really the key to a ready nation, as you stated on more than one occasion. So I'll let you comment the rest.
Yeah, so we have to unpack that. You said a lot. so so we'll start in a couple of spaces.
Oh, that's a shock.
Well, I didn't try and not miss any of the wickets. So first, let's say yes, yes, absolutely. Public education, public education, public education, public education. We could say it over and over and over and over again. Why? We say it because exactly your point, Dad. That if we're not educating everybody, then we are missing out on talent in this country that can continue to push us forward into the future successfully. So, absolutely necessary to find those pockets of brilliance and people with different skill sets and promote them and support them as much as we can. That's how we continue to be ready for the future. The second piece, though, is that we need to make sure that everybody is operating at their best. And so when we don't provide that education to everyone, then then we end up with this haves and have-nots perspective, and that is so predictably a failure. We can't go that direction. And so we have to support public education. We need to make sure that it is, if not one of the the primary focus area. I like to say education is the foundation of everything. That's our mantra this month, and that is how we change the future. So then we get into the second piece, which is, as you pointed out, there is a difference between federal level education programs and state level and community level. It is not the job or expectation, nor is it reasonable, appropriate, or good planning to have the federal government be making decisions for local teachers. Teachers know their students, they know their communities, they know the demographics, they've been there a long time. There is an element of knowing that's very important, and you cannot regulate that from DC across the entire country. That said, there is a role for the federal government in K-12 education to be able to help provide resources. And by resources, I don't just mean money. I mean information. I mean access to what works. I mean facilitating connectivity, making sure that teachers are armed with information from a variety of places. If Iowa has a great idea, don't just share it with 8 districts, share it with the entire country. This is what happens right now in Department of Ed. I'm very familiar with how this works. We do research grants. It helps one area. They share it with a few districts, and it is not shared nationally. And that right there is an initial problem. If you're doing research at the federal level with federal dollars, everybody should be benefit. I love that. Educating educators, exactly. And so that's the first thing the federal government can do. The second thing is we have to watch our regulations. Absolutely, for safety perspective, we have to have regulations. That includes making sure that students with disabilities are protected, making sure that obviously our teachers and our students are safe. So these areas you have to regulate. But what we should be doing is a whole lot more facilitating when it comes to classroom activities. There is a lot of work that we did overseas. Everyone is well familiar with the Nordic countries and the advancements that they are making. They are not collecting data on students as far as grades go until about 3rd grade. Why? Because they want these kids to be socially educated and emotionally regulatory and being able to develop as people first, not just as knowledge banks or information repositories. Education is about educating the whole person. The second thing that's really important at the federal level, though, is that we're not just bringing in knowledge from international and across states, but that we're actually thinking about a whole strategy for education. So, one of the candidates keeps saying they're only going to consider a K-12 teacher for Department of Ed, the secretary. I'm thrilled if the person you choose also has experience in K-12 education as a teacher, but the job is not to oversee K-12 teachers. The job is to be a strategic planner for how the entire nation is going to be ready for the future. That means you need to be worried about higher ed. It means you need to be worried about early childhood education. It means you need to be worried about our trade programs. It means you need to be concerned with and connected to Department of Labor. It means you need to be talking extensively with our military, who has a huge amount of money, as well as a lot of forward thinking in education. The Army learning model is very far along and frankly exceeds our K-12 learning models. The Air Force is doing some practices that is not crossing over in Department of Ed effectively. We need to recognize lifelong learning and making sure that all Americans at every age group, and we are looking at up to age 75 in this, have access to learning opportunities to ensure that they are ready for jobs today and jobs tomorrow. So I love when a Secretary of Ed also knows K-12, but they additionally need to know a whole lot more than that. And I fear that if we only focus on the K-12 piece, we are missing the rest of it. And it all is also important. So in this case, I will actually do a plug for the book. Um, this is a free book,
Should.
although if you want to buy it off of Amazon, you can. It is now available in print on Amazon. The government has released it publicly to Amazon to print. It costs $40, though, if you want a print copy. But because you have already paid for this as a taxpayer, it's called Modernizing Learning. If you look up J.J. Walcott, Modernizing Learning, you will find a free copy from the government that is a downloadable version, or you can get it from Amazon for $40 in print. And the goal of this was to create the model going forward of how to evolve the education system. So we need to share information internationally and across states, and we need to make sure that we're planning across the lifetime. Those are the biggies.
Yeah. As you were talking, I was thinking about some things about how teachers can be prepared, as they go through their life cycle as a teacher.
Yeah.
I'm certain, and I see that they um, always want to transition, you know, take off a summer, or they have their time away, which is actually necessary
Oh,
because
yeah.
being in a classroom, and most people just don't understand the stress that goes along in a classroom.
Anybody with
Heck, take a family structure, take a family structure with 3 or 4 kids, and then multiply that out by 10.
yeah,
So now you're trying to, corral 25 kids of
a lot.
diversity and everything else. It's pretty stressful. So, but I think the thing is why we're able to, in the future, I think this is going to be great, is that we have now so many other means to cross communicate than we've had in the past. I think one of the things that was really limiting was the fact is that educating anybody or cross communicating anywhere was a little more difficult than it is today. I mean, in the real world now, you can cross communicate effectively with the technology that we actually do have. It's it's um, do we have the opportunity? Does life, give you that opportunity to do it? You have to be committed to it. I mean, if you're not committed to making that sacrifice, and it is a sacrifice. Anybody that says it's not a sacrifice, it is. It's a sacrifice of trying to make sure that you stay enlightened on the different subject matter that we're talking about. And I think that's one of the things that has to be looked at when you're thinking about a Secretary of Education. I think those are vitally important pieces that we also take into that type of experiment or experiment. But experience, I guess, is part of that whole office and cabinet position. It might even take 2 cabinet positions. I don't know, because it's such an important. Should we enlarge the cabinet to another? But I don't know if that's really underneath. But underneath,
I'd vote no, but
yeah, I would just more underneath the secretary, I guess. But the fact is, we need to have that cross communications with all the departments. And
that does need to happen. The cross
yeah,
communication needs to happen. I was actually in a Department of Ed meeting, and so I'm sitting up at the front because I'm representing DoD in this case, and so I'm up with the leaders of the group, and someone talked about kind of what you said. What is the life cycle of a teacher, and how do they themselves develop over time cognitively? Not just how do they grow their skills, but actually how do they change in the way they view students, in the way they view themselves, etc. How do they mature? I said, well, it's a great question. In fact, we just finished one of those studies through the Office of Naval Research, and about 75% of the information that was gathered was actually from K-12 teachers and research. We could just share it with you, and it would at least be the 90% answer. And certainly you could build on it, but you may as well not start from scratch. And the woman turns to me and says, these people are getting millions of dollars a year. This was the elite group in the room that I was in, and I had no idea how
right.
much research and how much work is done in the Department of Defense for education. So we're not sharing. I mean, that's the punchline. We're not sharing information at all. They're not sharing it across the states. We're not sharing it it could be so substantially better, but it's not right now. And that's actually part of the reason that
Well,
Defense paid for the research that we did, because the ed was not focused there. They're
sure.
focused on business practices.
One of the things that, and I'm starting to, my brain is working a little bit on this. It's not very big, but it works occasionally. Um, I started thinking, if a teacher's out there, and this is probably true for going forward on almost any situation because of the fast-moving pace of the world, we either give them a 6 month or a year paid to continue, it'll help them rebuild themselves. Also, then we can start the cross communications, and I think that might be done every 5 to 8 years or so. In the eighth year, you get a year off, and during that year, you not only recharge your batteries, but you go out and we can really enlighten you further about what's going on and how you can improve your skill sets and everything. Is that ever going to come to pass? Probably not. It's a big money issue. I understand that, but
Yeah, that's very expensive to do. A
it is.
sabbatical times, I think
Yeah.
there's, I mean, you're talking millions of workers,
Oh, yeah, I know. That's a lot.
and yeah, an entire year would be truly
6 months, three
substantial.
months more or something. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think that's where a lot of folks would consider the summertime to be a bit of a sabbatical, right? So the question is, can you utilize that time, not taking away from teachers' time in the summer, but maybe enhancing it in smaller ways to ensure that they're getting some cross
Right.
information. I think right now what we've got to do is reduce the amount of stress that teachers are facing and empower them a lot more. And I think if you could do those two things, you would have teachers that would be, instead of recuperating and recovering during the summer months, might be motivated and able to do another 2 weeks
Right.
of learning with some additional pay. Um, but right, exactly, as Meredith's saying, some continuing education that has some additional pay attached. But
Right.
again, if you're burning out your teachers during the school year, there's no way. There's
Right.
no way. So we've got to bring them up. Yeah, Gary's saying visionary, innovator, leader, manager, and mostly track records. Agreed, Gary. Absolutely. There are so many pieces to the secretarial position if done correctly, and it would require a tremendous amount of knowledge of education. You would need to know about the K-12 school system, but like for me, I've spent a lot of time in the K-12 school system as a researcher. So I'm in the classroom, I'm working with the students, I'm working with the teachers, I'm working with the parents, I'm working with special needs programs, I'm working with administrators, but I would not qualify as a K-12 teacher,
Yeah.
right? And so it's totally different if you're a philanthropist who's never had any experience versus somebody who has had tremendous experience working with these programs, working in the classrooms, understanding the chaos, understanding the resource problems. Um, these are, categorically different, and we need to recognize that. Uh, a name for us, yeah, exactly. So we have a lot to get through. And it covers the top 10 things that we need to change, but I like to limit it to three. The first is we have to focus on lifelong learning. Can you hear me okay, Dad? Am I coming through?
Yeah. Hold on.
You hear me?
Well, I can hear you.
You can hear
You all
me?
done?
Okay.
I'm fixing our internet.
Okay. All right, so I'll give my top three for education real quick. We'll sum it
Okay.
up. One, it's got to be lifelong learning. That's birth to age 75. We need all people ready and interested. Two, we've got to have readiness to learn, readiness to teach. That means our kids have got to be having the meals they need in the morning and getting off to school. It means our teachers need the pay and resources they need, as well as the empowerment and support. And number three, education has got to focus on real world application.
Yep.
So we want to make sure our students know this is my skill, this is my brilliant space, this is what my superpower is, this is what I'm going to do in the future, and why what I'm doing in the classroom pertains to the world. And I think if we can improve in those three areas, we'll see a lot. Now, of course, the devil's in the details, and we've got a month to explain it.
Okay.
So we're going to get started. I'm going to do a plug for 3 p.m. Eastern today. We have the president of Phi Beta Kappa. This is an interview not to be missed. I've not gotten to advertise it because of the hurricane, so please share with anyone who can tune in. This man is tremendous. He speaks internationally about human rights. We met him in Atlanta, where he did an amazing panel sharing about how we need to be looking at how we connect as a country to reduce the toxicity. Phi Beta Kappa is a leader in the most innovative thinkers across our higher education system. So this is somebody we want to hear from. I know I'm personally very excited to have this interview and to be able to talk with him. So I hope you all will turn in. I know. Hang in there, Dad. Bye-bye.